The Elephant Who Listened. In the great city of Benares, the king owned the most magnificent elephant in all the land. His name was Mahalamuka, which means damsel face, for he was as gentle as he was grand. His mahout cared for him lovingly, and the elephant harmed no living creature. But one fateful night, a band of robbers gathered just outside Mahalamuka's stall. Hidden in the shadows, they whispered about their wicked plans. Night after night they returned, speaking of violence, cruelty, and ruthlessness. And the great elephant listened to every word. Slowly, something changed within the gentle elephant. The words of violence seeped into his mind like poison. His once kind eyes grew dark and fierce. Mahalamuka, who had never harmed a soul, began to believe that cruelty was what was expected of him. Terror struck the city of Benares. Mahalamuka went on a fearsome rampage. He attacked his own mahout and charged at anyone who came near. People fled in panic through the streets. The once beloved elephant had become the city's greatest danger, and no one could understand why. The worried king summoned his wisest minister, a man known for his great insight and compassion. The minister went to examine the elephant carefully. He checked for wounds, illness, and discomfort, but found nothing wrong with the elephant's body. Something else had caused this terrible change. The minister questioned the elephant keepers one by one. At last, he discovered the truth. A band of robbers had been gathering outside the stall each night, filling the air with talk of violence and cruelty. The elephant had absorbed their wicked words and made them his own. The wise minister had a wonderful plan. He gathered the most virtuous sages in the kingdom and asked them to sit by the elephant's stall each night. There, they spoke of kindness, compassion, patience, and mercy. And once again, the great elephant listened to every word, drinking in their goodness. Day by day, the good words worked their magic. Mahalamuka's fierce eyes grew soft again. His gentle nature returned completely. The king and minister watched with joy as the great elephant lovingly greeted his new mahout. And so they learned, we become like the company we keep. Moral: we become like the company we keep. Bad influences corrupt even the gentlest soul, while good influences can restore goodness within us. The Extraordinary Foal. Long ago, in a small town near the great city of Benares, there lived an old woman all alone in a crumbling house. Her family had once been wealthy merchants, but those days were gone. Now she lived simply, with only her kindness and her memories to keep her company. One evening, a horse dealer traveling with 500 horses stopped at her home, seeking shelter for the night. That very night, one of the dealer's finest mares gave birth to a beautiful foal, a tiny horse with a shimmering silver-white coat and a little star on its forehead. But the dealer was in a hurry to reach Benares. "Good mother," he said, "please care for this little one. I cannot take a newborn on the road." He left the foal with the old woman and promised to return, but he never did. The old woman fell in love with the tiny foal. Though she had little money, she fed it boiled rice and rice gruel, shared her own meals, and gathered the freshest grass from the riverbank. She brushed its coat until it shone like moonlight and sang it lullabies at night. The foal grew strong and beautiful under her loving care, its silver coat gleaming brighter each day. Years passed, and the foal grew into the most magnificent horse anyone had ever seen, a powerful Sind stallion with a coat like liquid silver and eyes full of intelligence. One day, a wise horse merchant named the Bodhisattva arrived in town with 500 horses. But when his horses approached the old woman's house, they suddenly stopped and refused to go any further, stamping their hooves nervously. "What is in that house that makes my horses so uneasy?" the Bodhisattva wondered. He went to the old woman's home and there he saw it, the most extraordinary horse he had ever laid eyes upon. Its silver coat rippled like water, its legs were long and powerful, and it held its head with the pride of a king. The Bodhisattva knew at once that this was a priceless thoroughbred Sind stallion. "Good mother," said the Bodhisattva gently, "this horse is far too fine for such a humble stable. Will you let me buy him? I will give you 6,000 gold coins, enough to live comfortably for the rest of your days." The old woman's eyes filled with tears. She loved the horse dearly, but she knew he deserved better than what she could give. "Take good care of him," she whispered, stroking his silver mane one last time. The Bodhisattva brought the extraordinary horse to the king of Benares. When the stallion was set free in the royal grounds, something magical happened. The horse galloped so fast that only a blur of silver light could be seen. It raced across the river without even wetting its hooves, flying over the water like the wind itself. The king and his court watched in speechless wonder. "This is no ordinary horse," exclaimed the king. "This is a gift from the heavens." So delighted was the king that he gave the Bodhisattva half his kingdom as reward. And the Bodhisattva, remembering the old woman's love, sent her riches and comfort for the rest of her life. For it was her humble, selfless care that had nurtured the greatness within the extraordinary foal all along. Moral: true worth comes from within, and humble love can nurture the greatest potential. The goat that laughed and wept. Long ago in the ancient city of Benares, there lived a Brahmin teacher who was famous throughout the land for his great learning. One day, he decided to hold a special feast to honor his departed ancestors, a feast for the dead. For this ceremony, he would need to sacrifice a goat. He sent his pupils to the market to buy the finest goat they could find. They returned with a gentle white goat with soft dark eyes. The Brahmin instructed his pupils, "Take this goat to the sacred river. Bathe it clean, hang a garland of flowers around its neck, feed it the finest grain, and bring it back to me." The pupils obeyed. They led the gentle goat to the riverbank, washed it carefully in the flowing water, draped a beautiful marigold garland around its neck, and fed it sweet grain from their hands. As the goat sat on the riverbank drying in the sun, something very strange happened. The goat suddenly threw back its head and burst into loud, wild laughter. It laughed and laughed, a sound so strange and startling that birds flew from the trees and the pupils stumbled backward in shock. A goat was laughing. They had never seen or heard anything like it in their lives. But just as suddenly as it had laughed, the goat stopped. Its large dark eyes filled with tears, and it began to weep loudly and bitterly, its whole body shaking with deep, sorrowful sobs. The pupils were even more bewildered. First laughter, now tears. What could this possibly mean? They hurried back to their teacher, leading the weeping goat behind them. The Brahmin was astonished. "Why did this goat laugh? And why does it weep?" he asked. To everyone's amazement, the goat spoke. "Long ago, I was a Brahmin just like you. I too held a feast for the dead, and I too sacrificed a goat. Because of that single act of killing, I have been reborn and lost my head 499 times. This is my 500th and final life. I laughed with joy because today my suffering ends at last." "But then why did you weep?" the Brahmin asked, his voice trembling. The goat looked at him with deep, compassionate eyes. "I wept for you, dear Brahmin. If you kill me today, you will set foot on the same terrible path I walked. You too will lose your head 500 times across 500 lifetimes. I wept because I feel sorry for the suffering that awaits you." The Brahmin was shaken to his very soul. "Then I will not kill you," he cried. "I will protect you." The Brahmin released the goat and ordered his pupils to follow it and make sure no harm came to it. The goat wandered freely along the hillside, nibbling at leaves near a great rock. But at that very moment, a bolt of lightning struck the rock from a clear sky. A sharp fragment of stone broke off and flew through the air, striking the goat. The goat's long suffering was finally over. Even the Brahmin's kindness could not undo the power of the goat's past deeds. At that moment, a radiant spirit appeared, the tree spirit who dwelled in the great banyan tree nearby. He sat cross-legged in the air above the crowd, glowing with golden light, and spoke in a voice that reached every heart. If people truly knew the price of taking a life, that suffering would follow them through lifetime after lifetime, no living being would ever harm another. The Brahmin and his pupils fell to their knees. From that day on, they vowed never to harm any living creature, and they taught this wisdom to all who would listen. Moral: every act of harm, no matter how small, carries consequences that follow us far beyond this life. Choose kindness over tradition when tradition causes suffering.